Hey, Lark and Rose here, and I have good news and bad news regarding the little candles in the dark discussions that I'm trying to do on a weekly basis. The bad news is I've only gotten around to doing one this week. The good news is it was actually twice as long as most of them, and it was a really good one. It was with a retired DC cop. So that got kind of interesting, as you will soon see. I've already given the blurb about what these are and stuff, so I don't need to do that all over again. So let me just disappear and get right to it.
I really don't know what to expect, but I'm always down for anything new. So
Cool. Cool.
My name is Bart, and I am originally from Washington D.C. I'm retired now. I'm living in Knoxville, Tennessee, and so a little bit about myself. I'm a retired D.C. police officer. I was in law enforcement 28 years, and now I'm retired. I don't do anything. That's why I moved south. so I volunteer and things like that. A lot of I've coached youth sports for a long time, 28 years. So I'm actually coaching football down here.
Cool.
It's kind of my hobby, what I do.
Excellent.
So what about you? Tell me a little bit more about what you're doing here.
Well, in a second, I'll give the blurb about what the exchange is. I've been an author for many years, and I was sort of politically active like a zillion years ago, hoping not running for office, but hoping for a political solution to things, and constantly frustrated by corrupt politicians. And with being in D.C., you've probably seen your share of that.
Well, this is one thing, I'll share this with you, is that a lot of people don't realize a lot of these guys are friends, even though they may snipe at each other on TV.
Oh, I know.
I've seen them at the 4Ps and the places they go to, and they drink together and they hang out together. So that's one thing that I did learn, is that no matter what you see, there's usually some behind the scenes stuff going on, a lot of play acting stuff going on.
Yeah.
I mean, they have their views and their opinions, but a lot of the animosity is just not real, because I've seen them tipping back together in the bars, so I know.
Yeah, professional wrestling. They have to put on a show for everybody.
Yeah, and I also get picked up. They would rather be with each other than us.
Yeah. I'd rather them be with each other than us. Okay, so for this little thing, basically what I do here is it's a better way to communicate to people the things that I believe in and the people who believe as I do, because it isn't about, like, I'm going to beat you over the head with my opinion until you agree, which, like, never works for anybody anyway. It's basically to show that a lot of people already have so much in common with each other, and what they don't is usually things they were taught to misunderstand and stuff. So what I do here, I may or may not have sent this to you before. It's not about an argument. It's not a debate. You don't have to win anything. It's really just a matter of, I ask you some questions about what you believe, mostly about how you think society ought to be and how people ought to behave. And if you have 15 minutes, we'll shoot for that. If you want to extend it to 20 minutes, we can do that. But
yeah, I mean, I'll answer the best that I can from just my view and opinions.
Yeah, because it's not like trivia and stuff. You don't have to know
so
some weird stuff.
I'll do my best to put my 2 cents in. That's fine.
Excellent.
So it just seems like something fun. Like I said, since I've been retired, I've done all kinds of new stuff. All kinds of new stuff that I thought I would never do. I mean, I was when I got down here at some youth camp, I was involved in where they were doing this drama, and I was a robot in a 7-foot tall costume. Things I'd never think. I was on stage. I never thought I'd do anything like that. So this is just something else new. This sounds like fun. Nice to meet you too. And you said you're in Arizona?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right, then.
And so yeah. Okay. So I'll keep an eye on my clock here, and I'll start it here. Just to jump right into it, and these are questions I asked everybody, but they may be a little bit different given the fact that you used to be in law enforcement. Are there any laws that you can think of that you really think the law is wrong? Like, the law shouldn't be that?
law that's wrong. Well, I'm sure that if I put on my thinking cap, I could probably create a list. There are some laws that are not fair. I don't know if I'll go as far as to say wrong. I think that there is a reason for everything, but there's some that's not fair, and I'll share a personal experience of what I think is not fair. And I get it, but it just wasn't fair. So, like in D.C., speed cameras is a big thing. Brings in a lot of revenue to the city. I myself made profit from it because I got the training to be able to work overtime and go out and check on the cars that set up and stuff. So the one thing that I learned, though, if you have legal tags and your car's legit and you blow through one of these things or these red light cameras, you're going to get a ticket in the mail, all right? And let's just say that you're not illegal, that you got fake tags on your car or stolen tags or no tags, then you're scot-free. There's no way to ever track you down.
They can't find you anyway.
The city, they just want, and I learned over the years, they just want the money.
Yeah.
They just want the money. And, like, even in D.C., unlike other places, I don't know what it's like in Arizona, but, like, in D.C., like, even when you go to traffic court, and believe it or not, the D.C. police, we don't do a lot of traffic because we have our own traffic adjudicators that go out and do a lot of traffic. We mostly will respond to calls for service, but I have been to traffic court, and you can admit, deny, or admit with an explanation, which is what most people do.
Yeah.
Because then they get a fine, but they don't get any points on their license or anything. And usually they lower the fine. It's like I've noticed in DC, they just want income coming in to the city.
It's just a revenue thing.
Yeah, it's a revenue thing. So yeah, I mean,
okay.
in a large scheme of things.
How about if we use, like, it doesn't have to be here and now, it can be a different time. Like, once upon a time in this country, slavery was legal and it was enforced.
Right.
Would you agree that was not okay? Like, that was a bad law?
That's horrible. That's a horrible sin that our country committed, that we see the repercussions of it today, and probably always will. Yeah.
Now, given back then that was actually the law, like, you weren't allowed to help people escape, and you weren't, like, if you were a slave, you were treated as property. Do you think it was moral and justified for the law enforcers back then to actually enforce that law?
Oh, wow, yeah, that is, man, I never really thought about that before. They were doing their job, but it definitely was immoral.
Yeah.
It was wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's sort of the question is does the fact that there was a law and legislation and they were told to do it, does that make it okay what they did, or were they morally in the wrong regardless of the law?
Yeah, they were morally in the wrong regardless. No way around about it. No excuse about it. No matter even during that period of time that the views and thoughts and laws are different, it's still wrong.
Yeah.
There's no way to justify it. Even then, I think that at least we know probably half the country, that's why there was a civil war, saw that it was wrong too. So they knew.
Yeah.
They knew it was wrong.
And I totally agree. Now, to make it one step more uncomfortable, if you picture the people, like the organization that called themselves the Underground Railroad, that were trying to illegally sneak slaves out of the South and get them up north, breaking the law in the process, if the law enforcement of the day caught them doing that, do you believe those people would have a right to not only break the law to try to help them escape, but actually forcibly resist the law enforcers that came to say, nope, we're catching the slaves and taking them back and maybe arresting you for trying to help them? Like, do you?
Yes. In that scenario, I believe so.
Okay.
I believe in that scenario, I can understand and would approve of resistance.
Okay. I agree completely. Now, do you think that law or legislation, do you think that's ever why something is bad? In other words, can something be, let's say, well, let's use alcohol prohibition. Like, do you think people should have the right to have a beer?
Well, yes.
Okay. Now, once upon a time in this country, you weren't allowed to. Like, it was illegal to make and have and do all that.
Yeah. I've thought about that before. It blows my mind. Yes.
that used to be against the law. Now, when there was that law, do you think the fact that it was made illegal, do you think that made it actually bad to have a beer? Obviously, it made it dangerous to have a beer, but did it actually make it bad when they made it illegal? Like, one day it was legal, the next it was... Whoops. Our connection paused for a second.
We lost our connection for a second, yeah.
Go
ahead with your question.
Okay. The question was, when alcohol became illegal, obviously that can make it hazardous to deal in alcohol because you might get arrested and all that. But do you believe it actually made it immoral to do it, or just dangerous? In other words, did it somehow become immoral to have a beer when alcohol prohibition happened, or did it just become dangerous?
No, I don't think it was immoral. I guess to certain folks it may have been, but that's more of a personal type opinion. I mean, one day it was legal and the next day it wasn't.
Yeah.
I probably need to read up on that and find out even why that happened, why it became, why there was prohibition. I really don't know. It's something I need to educate myself about. But no, I don't believe that it was immoral even when it was illegal.
I agree. Okay, again, moving to the uncomfortable line. If you don't think it's immoral to have a beer and the law enforcement are going after people who are, doing their whiskey distilling and whatever, and they're going after them, do you believe that people had a right to forcibly resist law enforcement? If if they were doing something moral and the law enforcement was going after them for doing something moral, did they have a right to resist?
We're talking in that scenario.
Yeah, alcohol prohibition. Man.
Wow. I don't know. That one I have to think a little bit further about, because when you say resist, we may be thinking of different levels of resistance. So do I think that they were okay to hide and continue to do what they were doing? Yes. Should it result to violence? Probably, in my view, no. But, that's something for me to think about.
Okay. Yeah, I totally understand. And that's a lot of the point of why we do this, is have people think about things from a direction that, you don't usually hear this in the news and stuff. You hear all about the law, but you don't hear about, well, sometimes is it actually better to break the law?
Sure. Yeah, I get that. And being that I'm a former police officer, yeah, this is kind of fun for me. So,
cool.
Yeah, let's continue.
Cool. Let me ask sort of a philosophical question. Do you think that when somebody is in law enforcement, whether you or anybody else, do you think they have the moral right to do anything that the rest of us don't have the moral right to do? Like, well, let me back up a step. Like, if there's somebody running around attacking people with axes, do you agree that anybody has the right to, like, tackle them and try to stop them?
I do.
Okay.
I do, and personally, I'm a very strong proponent of 2A rights.
Me too.
And I myself, when I was a police officer, I spent my entire career in patrol division. So I can't tell you the exact number of homicides I've been on, but I've been on over 125 myself.
Right.
Over 125. The one thing I can say about all 125 of those homicides is that the victim had no way to defend themselves.
Yeah. Wow, wait, can we take that in a direction? You were in D.C. Whoops, did we lose our connection? Oh, okay, there you are.
No, I'm here.
You were in D.C. where, unless I'm mistaken, the government tells people you're not allowed to have the means to defend yourself.
That is correct. As a matter of fact, D.C. has some of the strongest gun laws in the nation. Period.
Yeah. Now, having seen all those victims unable to defend themselves, do you believe that if somebody in D.C. said, screw you, I'm having a gun, I know the politicians say I'm not allowed to, but my life may depend on it, do you believe it's moral for them to ignore those laws and be armed?
I'll make it even more personal and tell you a story that you get caught with a gun in D.C., you're going to jail, you're getting locked up, you probably do time.
Yeah.
There was a family that was traveling through the city, got lost from Mississippi, and they flagged me down. And they were in a pretty tough area, and they told me they were lost. And the guy said he was nervous. He felt like people were, scoping him out. And they probably were.
Yeah.
And then he had made mention to me, I'm so glad that I'm armed and that there's police officers in the neighborhood. And I just ignored that.
I appreciate that.
I told him to follow me, and I escorted him out of the city. Now, here's the thing. Technically, man, would I have gotten in trouble if that had got out back when I was on the job?
Yeah.
Could have even, I'm not joking, could have even got fired because technically it's failed to take police action.
Yeah.
They could have fired me. But you know what? On that night, I did what I did. Period.
I absolutely commend you for doing what I believe was absolutely the right thing to do. Now, so sort of back to the theoretical. I love that story. Thank you for that. Do you believe if somebody lives in D.C. and even knows the law, they didn't just accidentally stumble in and didn't know any better, but they know the law and they say, yeah, but I'm in a dangerous part. I'm not going to risk my family's life. I'm going to illegally arm myself. Do you believe it's immoral for them to break that law in an effort to protect their family?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. And
I agree.
it does put police officers in a tough situation because I know for a fact well over more than half of the police department in D.C. doesn't like supporting those laws, those specific laws. I know that. Mm-hmm. Just from talk with friends and the banter in the locker rooms, I know that. It's a tough situation because there are also a lot of bad guys there that carry guns also that do commit crimes and hurt people.
Yeah.
But again, it comes back to an honest citizen, for the most part, follows the law and won't arm themselves in that city.
But then they're
So
on
they put themselves at risk.
then they're victimized more often because of it. All right, let me once again take it up to the uncomfortable level. If somebody lives in D.C. and says, I'm in a dangerous part of D.C., of which there are plenty, as you well know, and I'm going to retain the ability to defend my family, if cops show up and say, we know, you didn't threaten anybody, you didn't harm anybody, but we found out you illegally have a gun, and we're here to arrest you, do you believe that person has an obligation to go along with that? Or do you believe they'd actually be right to resist the enforcement of that law?
Well, and this is just my personal opinion. I believe that the justice system does work most of the time. There's always times when it fails, but for the most part, it does work. And I would myself, I'm putting myself in that scenario, I would comply and try to battle it in the courts is what I would do. I wouldn't take it to that level of violent resistance at that point.
I understand.
Those type of scenarios.
And obviously it can be very hazardous for somebody to resist. But the question is still, if somebody chooses to say, I'm going to arm my family, and and I believe that to be moral, and you even said you thought it was moral, if somebody says, nope, we're here, we have our law, we have our, our badges, and we're here to arrest you for maintaining the ability to defend your family, if they say, well, then I'm going to defend my family against you, obviously it's not going to go well for them probably, but do you believe they're morally in the right?
Yeah, well, that's happened before. Look at Ruby Ridge and things like that. Taking a little out of context, but I get that. I in this scenario, I would just say I can only say what I would do. Mm-hmm. For me, I'm at the point where, and it might surprise people because I am pro Second Amendment and I enjoy shooting sports and I've been on a lot of scenes of violent crime and stuff, but man, I want to keep the peace as much as possible. So for me, I would comply, and I would probably hope that most people would comply, but I also get people's frustration and anger too, because it's wrong.
Yeah.
And I understand that.
And
I
that's
guess for me, I'm just looking at maybe keeping people from getting hurt is the way I'm kind of seeing it.
yeah, and I understand. And that's, you know, that's sort of the crux of the matter is when there's a conflict between, and first I'll make it personal, when there's a conflict between your moral code and your conscience on the one hand and what the law says you're supposed to do, whether you're the guy with the badge or the guy on the receiving end of the guy with the badge, which do you think matters more? Which do you think people should pay more attention to, their own conscience or the dictates of the law? Which do you think matters more?
Well, a man has to be true to himself.
I agree.
I understand that. One thing I'll add out there, because a lot of people don't know this, and it's something that's changed in law enforcement in the past 20 years, is officers used to have a lot of discretion about how they would handle scenarios, like the one I told you about.
Yeah.
But it's been taken away, you know, especially in the last 10 years. The officers who fail to comply with directional orders, they get slam dunked.
Yeah.
And with suspensions and loss of pay, and you know, these guys have families like everybody else, so it makes it kind of forces compliance on them to enforce the law without thinking things through. Because a lot of, like, here's something a lot of people don't know too. Our department in Washington, D.C., we were the largest minority department in the nation. We also have more females than any other department in the nation. A lot of the guys that worked for us, grew up in some of these disadvantaged neighborhoods. So this is a good government job with good pay. And a lot of them, man, don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
You know? And so the department
go ahead.
uses that, holds that over their head, you know? And that's one way that they kind of take away that option of what do I think about this. I've seen that over the years.
Yeah.
When I first started, man, you know, you didn't have to give someone a ticket for something, but now with the body cams and things like that, they use that not just to capture information, but to also hold you to accountability. And accountability is good, but it's also to hold you in compliance. And that's something that I learned also. Yeah. Just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Now I can barely see my clock. Oh, we're over the 15 minutes. You can either stop or we could go a couple more and wrap it up.
I got a couple more minutes. That's fine.
Okay.
I got a couple more minutes.
Because that's sort of the crux and the punchline is when you get, so you have, you know, the government and then, you know, the higher ups in the police department and then the cops. And like you said, the body cams are used to make sure you're doing what the higher ups and what the politicians told you to. They pass a law and you darn well better enforce it or you get in trouble. And then on the receiving end, you get somebody who may be doing something perfectly moral, whether it's like having a beer, an alcohol prohibition, or trying to free slaves, or, you know, maintaining a firearm so they can protect their family somewhere where it's illegal. When it comes down to it, where you have human beings with badges and guns who are told, go disarm those other human beings. They didn't threaten anybody or harm anybody yet, but the politician said they're not allowed to be armed. So go disarm them. And if somebody says, I'm not going to let you disarm me, I'm going to resist. And I understand, you know, that goes bad and it's not what you would do. And it's not something I would recommend most people do because they'll probably just end up dead, which doesn't really help their family or anybody else. But if somebody makes that choice and says, you're not going to arrest me for being able to defend my family and you're not going to disarm me, I'm going to resist. And so you have two people there and they're both armed and they're ready for a violent conflict. Which of them do you actually think is morally righteous?
Wow. Well, like I said, a man has to be true to his heart first and foremost. So I get it. You know?
I agree.
I get it. You know, I get that and I understand that. And and like I said, I just told you how I would respond. Mm-hmm. But I can see and understand why someone may result to taking a different path than I would take.
Yeah.
You know?
Excellent. Well, that about wraps it up. I'll throw in this thought. I don't even usually throw in my thoughts because I want to see what they think and what they believe. But in that equation, in that situation where there's somebody with a gun and a badge and a uniform and a job and a law saying you have to go disarm this person, and there's a person saying I'm not going to let you disarm me. If the person with the badge and the gun didn't believe that the politicians had a right to do that, basically didn't believe in the authority of the state, they didn't believe that making it law makes it okay to do something, do you think there would even be that conflict?
Well, like I said, they're gonna, and this may be why they do it, because of reasons like that. They make it hard on the officer. They really make it hard on them, and with the threat of losing pay and losing their job. I tell you how I would do it. I'm an old timer at that time, a veteran. I know a lot of tricks. I would just grab my stomach and go, Sarge, my stomach, I'm too sick to carry through. I can't do this today.
Mm-hmm.
I got to go to the clinic. And I would excuse myself from the scenario.
Yeah.
But young guys, they don't think like that. And they teach them more. Not only that, I'll even take it a step further. When they're being trained in the academy now, they really drill it into their head to not give discretion, to not think about their personal views and thoughts, but to just do what they're told. And in some ways, I mean, I understand that because I'll share with you, like, I'm a pro-life person by my personal beliefs, but I've been on all those protests and marches, and I've defended both sides, as I'm supposed to do. And I did that without, even though into my head I may have supported one side, but with my actions I was, by the book,
mm-hmm.
treated everybody the same like I'm supposed to. I don't know if that's kind of the same thing, but that's just something that popped into my head.
Yeah. What do you think? All right, last question, I promise. What do you think the world would look like if all the cops, all the law enforcers, they had basically a fundamentally different mindset, which is, I still want to protect people, I still want to stop the bad guys, but I will never do anything that I don't think normal people have the right to do. In other words, I can still, anybody has the right to stop the bad guys, stop thieves, investigate crimes and all that, but I will do and never do anything just because authority told me to.
Well, I mean, that's an idea worldwide. I don't think that's possible. I don't think it would ever happen. But I do think this. I do think that police officers should be allowed to use their own head and have discretion on how to handle situations. Everything should not be black and white. There are gray areas. Even crimes where I have made arrests for, I understood why it occurred. So there was never like, I heard the lady the other day talk about she had a bad interaction with a police officer and he yelled at her. I mean, I don't understand why things like that happen. Sometimes you might catch a cop having a bad day or something, but I mean, that's been me. I mean, I've had bad days and I've had to remain professional at all times. So I don't cut the guy a pass on that,
mm-hmm.
for acting like that. I think that police work is, cause I did it. Nobody in my family ever did it before me. I fell into it kind of. I think that it's a unique job because, man, you deal with so much stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And you usually, for the most part, you're catching people maybe not at their best.
Yeah.
And, you need to have as much discretion as possible to do your job because everything does not have to result in an arrest. I could tell you some more things that I've done and maybe I shouldn't have done, but,
mm-hmm.
I think I'll pass on that for now.
Okay.
But for the most part, I mean, when I had to lock people up, I mean, I locked people up. But some of them, I mean, I locked them up, but I was in the neighborhood. Everybody knew me. I knew the good guys and the bad guys. I wasn't enemies with everybody,
mm-hmm.
Even guys I'd locked up, or even guys I had fought before. we could be cordial with each other down the road because of, you know, that community policing that I really put into effect in my area. I mean, people knew me, so they knew I was going to be fair. They knew that if you committed a crime in front of me, I was going to arrest you. You knew if you fought me, I was going to fight you back. But as soon as I got the cuffs on, it was over, you know? It was over. And I wasn't going to think about you that night or the next day, you know? I don't know if it's just the way I was trained, the way I come up or whatever, but it was a good career. It was a good career for me. I'm enjoying my retirement. And I'm glad I have a pension, and that that's why I moved south, away from all the craziness and the bustle of the big city. So God bless the guys out there doing it now. I don't know that I would be so inclined to do it now.
Yeah.
Because I keep talking about discretion, but I think it's so important for an officer to be able to use their head. And to figure things out for themselves and how to proceed in certain situations. And the more that's taken away, I just don't see that being good for the police, and I don't see it being good for citizens. Yeah. And I see it causing more problems down the road. It might be a big part of some of the problems that we're having right now because of this.
Yeah, so makes it into a conflict.
That's my 2 cents for the day. I hope that I've added something to the conversation. And thank you for making me think. I appreciate that. So
absolutely, that was fun. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, it was great. Nice meeting you, and I look forward to seeing more of your video conversations.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
All right then.
So there you have it. That was pretty cool. There was a lot to dissect and get into about that as far as psychology and philosophy and stuff like that. And as usual on the Rose channel, Amanda and I will be posting a video where we go through that stuff and the Candles in the Dark method and the psychology involved and all that fun stuff. But as usual, we're posting the raw, unedited, complete exchanges here on YouTube for free. And then if you want the in-depth analysis, go to the Rose channel. There's a link in the description below to get that.